And let's go in depth on this story now as we see Arizona essentially made the dumping ground for illegals. Joining us via Skype, Arizona Attorney General Tom Horne. Tom, when we see the situation that has developed here in your home state of Arizona, this seems like fiction, and yet it's a fact that the Grand Canyon State has to deal with. What can you tell us about what is transpiring there in Arizona?
Well, it sounds very bizarre. Apparently, they caught illegal aliens trying to cross the border in Texas, and instead of sending them back to Mexico, they sent them to Arizona, which is about as bizarre a thing as I can think of.
Now, as I understand it, these illegals, whether they're from Central America or Mexico, are given what we call catch and release. They're said, here's a notice to appear in front of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, within 15 days. General Horne, do you expect any of these immigrants to show up and answer those summons within 15 days?
No, you'd have to be a real sucker to think somebody's going to show up if they know that the consequences are going to be bad. Why should they show up? The fact that they were trying to cross the border illegally shows that they don't respect the law. So when they're caught, they should be held and sent back to Mexico, not sent to Arizona. That's really weird.
Well, Tom, as we look at this, and it's interesting, someone who does not live in a border state, a Senate leader in Washington has a very different take. Maryland Senator Barbara Mikulski says this issue is a humanitarian crisis requiring a humanitarian response. Tom, when you see those words from Senator Mikulski, how would you respond to that statement?
Well, a country that doesn't enforce its laws is no longer a functioning country. Our laws say that if you want to come to this country, there's procedures you go through. And when people sneak around those procedures and sneak across the border, they're breaking the law. And I think that's the primary factor that we're dealing with here.
Tom, we look back at Arizona's legislative history. In the year 2010, the legislature passed and Governor Jan Brewer signed into law SB 1070, which essentially said that Arizona was going to enforce federal immigration law within its borders. That law was subsequently basically struck down, many elements of it, because the Department of Justice actually went to court to keep Arizona from enforcing immigration law. Do you have any notion of this being the politics and policy of retribution towards Arizona for taking such a strong stand?
Well, JD, first of all, I think one thing to note about our defense of Senate Bill 1070 is that the most controversial and the most focused on aspect of that law was the part that said that if a police officer lawfully stops or arrests someone and has reasonable suspicion that person is here illegally, the officer must contact ICE to find out. He doesn't have a choice. There's no discretion. He must contact ICE. That part of the law was upheld by the United States Supreme Court, and that was the really key part of the law. I think the parts that were struck down were really more subsidiary and much less important points. As far as retribution goes, I litigate against the Obama administration a lot. We joke that I sue Obama twice before breakfast, and I think it comes the other way as well. For example, when the National Labor Relations Board, appointed by Obama, objected to 4 states, one of which was Arizona, passing constitutional amendments that guaranteed workers a right to a secret ballot, they sent a letter saying they objected because they like the policy of card check, where union bosses can intimidate members into signing cards and then they become the representatives rather than having a secret ballot. They sent a letter to the 4 attorneys general, one of which was myself, saying they would sue us if we didn't agree not to enforce it. We responded that we would enforce it, and they promised to sue 4 states, but when the time came, they only sued 1, and that was Arizona. I got summary judgment against them. They didn't appeal, and so I'm proud to say that I have defended and established the right to workers all over the country, not just in Arizona, to a secret ballot in labor union elections as long as their states pass similar state constitutional amendments. But I think that's an example of how they like to target us, and it works both ways. We like to sue them as well. I won 2 U.S. Supreme Court cases that I personally argued last year against federal overreach, one of which established our right to require that people registering to vote give evidence of citizenship. where the Obama administration argued directly against us on that. So we have a lot of litigation against them, and we seem to be doing quite well.
General Horne, now back to the issue of these immigrants flooding into Arizona and elsewhere across the country here. Is the response to this a lawsuit as well?
You know, I read these articles over the weekend, so we're going to have to study it, and I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do about it. But it certainly is an outrage. If you stop illegals in Texas, you should send them back to Mexico, not send them to Arizona. That's bizarre.
And from one of the things we're reading is they're not just coming from Mexico; they're coming from other Central and South American states. So it's, you know, not as simple as just turning them back and sending them across the border or dropping them off across the border. Do you know how that would work if they're not of Mexican descent? If, you know, what will be the process then?
Well, they have flown them back to cities, and I mean, not everybody is from northern Mexico. They're from all parts of Mexico, and they've flown them back to Mexico, and they can fly them back to Honduras or wherever they're from.
Tom, continuing with this story, and you mentioned having success with a key provision of Senate Bill 1070 in terms of Immigration's Custom and Enforcement, or ICE, actually being informed by local law enforcement as to immigration status. But it seems that ICE has gone into the deep freeze in terms of actually enforcing immigration law. As I understand it, federal agents are accompanying some of these illegals when they are being flown from Texas to Arizona. If that in fact is taking place, what does that say about this administration, not only the Department of Justice, but now the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration's Custom and Enforcement, or ICE?
Well, you know, if they can fly them to Arizona, they can fly them to Honduras. So that's really what they ought to be doing. We've been complaining for some time about the policies of the Obama administration with respect to immigration. You have to remember, Obama appointed Arizona's former governor, Janet Napolitano, to be head of Homeland Security, which is a position she held till just recently. When she was governor, she used to say that if you build a 20-foot fence, they can always bring 22-foot ladders, which seemed to indicate that she thought it was impossible to defend our border. And so I started copying the joke of another political figure who used to say, it's easier to catch them crossing the desert if they're carrying 22-foot ladders.
Tom Horne, I'm no stranger to the political rough and tumble that exists in Arizona. We would be remiss if we did not turn from policy to politics. It appears the Arizona establishment, Senator McCain, Senator Flake, and others, are endorsing an opponent over you in terms of the upcoming Republican primary. What is the reason for this? Because you're the guy who's guts up on border issues? We've got about a minute left.
Well, there's a small self-selected group that regard themselves as the establishment, and they think they get to choose who the public officials are in Arizona. The fact is they don't, the people do. And in 2010, I had a primary election, a statewide primary election, in which both of the U.S. senators, McCain and Kyle at the time, and all the congressmen, except with one exception, that were Republicans, endorsed my opponent. He ended up carrying one county out of 15 Arizona counties. That was Santa Cruz County, where he grew up. He didn't carry any of the other 15 counties. So when this self-selected establishment opposes me, it's a good prediction that I'm going to win the election.
All right, Tom Horne, we'll leave it there. We thank you for your insights into what is transpiring in your state, both politically and in terms of public policy, and we look forward to you joining us again on America's Forum. There is more to come. Don't go away.